I think in my last 2 years, I would say I've really pushed the envelope of like really putting myself in an uncomfortable space of something in like professionally that I would never do. But in turn, that has also personally made some changes of like having more belief in my beliefs, if that makes sense, of like I'm doing these things and I'm making these changes because they feel the best for me and I'm able to show up better. And then like I think, I had said a little bit before about being uncomfortable about saying kind things about yourself. I think when you have that growth, it doesn't become like, oh, I'm saying kind things about myself. Oh, I'm saying not nice things about myself. It just becomes like this beautiful flowing space where it just is like a feel good space. And then when you do have things that feel kind of on the two different spectrums, you're not having those extreme high lows.
Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Smith. And if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. And if you love this podcast and you want some more tips and tricks, there are tons of instructional videos at my YouTube channel. You can find the links down below. But before you go ahead and do that, I would like you to stick around for pure strength herself, Kristine Williams.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. You could be a DJ or like a event announcer, I think, right?
I think I could possibly handle that. I think you know, I think that could be a future occupation. You never know.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, your next calling, right?
Absolutely.
That's great.
So, first, thank you for being on the podcast. I
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Thanks for
And second, I have a question I like to start podcasts with.
Sounds good.
And the question is, how is it, Kristine, that you impact the lives of the people around you?
Ooh, that's a good question. That could be a lengthy answer.
That's okay.
So, and I think that, that's such a great question, Kyle, because I think it's really evolved over time. I've been doing this for over 18 years. And I think in my last few years, I've really stepped into more of like almost creating an awakening with the women that I'm working with. Before it was like, okay, what's your strength program? And we're looking to lose weight. And it was like very just kind of boxy. So, and now we're talking about all this stuff like, why do you feel the way that you do? Why are you okay with, not feeling better? Why are you okay with not taking any time for yourself? And so we're just really digging into like how I always kind of references is having a strong body is going to equal a strong mind. But often we dig at the strong mind first so that you feel good about the changes that you're making. And then it just kind of has that beautiful trickle effect. And then it's like people are just kind of blossoming and figuring out things about themselves or things that they've forgotten about themselves. And so that's what we talk a lot about. Like, what have you forgotten about yourself that is something that made just you feel joy? And how can we bring that up again? Like, let's not let it bubble below. Let's bring that to the surface and figure out what's going on.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that you use the word awakened. I think that's cool. And before we were chatting, you were talking about your own sense of awakening as well, and a lot of aspects of that. And please share how you're enjoying your life.
And so many things. I think what I've learned is I've over the years is that I used to just really overthink things. So I was always really stuck up in here, like thinking about, okay, if I do that, what are other people thinking? If I do that, how will it impact other people? And instead, I really find now is that living my life is really, how is it feeling for me? Am I able to show up at my best self? And that means like taking care of myself, being strong, doing all of the habits that make me feel really good so that I can show up best in all the rest of the parts of my life because I feel really good with what my habits are because I've spent a lot of time digging into like what are the habits that feel good for me. And then if I can take those in turn and share them with other people and help them, find their kind of like key factors of what are going to make their I always say it's like you're missing a puzzle piece. So let's like figure out how we can put that puzzle piece together that feels good for you.
Mhm.
Right. And
Yeah,
everyone's different in that way. So
totally.
for me, I don't know, just taking care of myself. And I think being curious because I would say I always have been, but I was afraid to like what is that? What is the impact going to be if I say yes to some things that make me feel really uncomfortable? So I had shared with you earlier that when I had my kids was a big game changer. So when I had my son, I was 27, and I started really thinking about like, I had some serious insecurities and was not loving the way that I was living my life or putting myself out there. And I was really afraid of instilling that on my children. Then I turned 30, I had my daughter, and I'm like, okay, I need to just get my shit together and be open instead of thinking it, but like, I need to change everything because that's scary and daunting and it's just filling the space more. It's like, I just need to be open to like, how do I really feel? What are the habits that I really don't want my kids to follow along with? And I was saying too, I don't want them to miss out on life experience because I had reservations about things. So it's just having that openness to different opportunities and trying things. And I don't really think there's such thing as failure necessarily. I think it's more like, you know what, I gave it a go and it's not for me. It doesn't mean failure. I just didn't enjoy it. It didn't instill joy for me. So I'm going to try something different.
I like that for a couple things. For fail, I think of it as an acronym for a faithful attempt in learning.
I agree.
And the other part
Mhm.
that you said there, oh, I forgot what it was, but I have a question.
Yeah.
So I find, or at least, or for myself, as well as the difficulty of making changes in clients that I've worked with, and I imagine you've worked with as well, and your experiences as well, uh, and definitely my experience. The difficult aspect of change seems to be looking in the mirror and
Mhm.
seeing the person that's preventing the progress.
Yes. Yeah.
How have you found looking at yourself from a perspective rather than in it has helped you change yourself into the character you are today?
Okay, well, Dave, these are my first thoughts when you ask me that. Years ago, I had a girlfriend say to me, how long are you going to be okay with the same conversation? And I hold that really tight because my thought was when she said it to me, I think I like retracted and I said, ew, because I knew I didn't like what my story was, but I was just really up in here about it because I didn't know what to do to step forward. And
Mhm.
so then that's where the shift became was like, I don't want to have that whole story. I don't want to be the person showing up where everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be the same thing again. Because we all no, we've probably played that role at some point, or there's people we know that are like that. And we all have an opportunity to make change. And I think that knowing, like, just being probably a little bit more gentle with myself, like, I don't need to change everything at once. It's okay if it doesn't really feel good because where I was at felt super crappy. And then making those changes is just really awkward. And I would say probably most of my life up until after I had my kids and I started really working on it, I always felt awkward anyways. So I was like, well, I'm just going to feel awkward in a different way. So, and that's okay. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like, I think just accepting yourself for who you are. Everybody's different. It'd be boring if we were all, the same.
True.
And then I think just instilling habits that just feel good for you. But I think first and foremost, it was like any choices that I always make, it's just to see, is this going to make me feel better? Do I like this? And I know it's not like necessarily like a one time, like give it an opportunity. Is this working? Is it resonating with me? Is it filling my cup? Is it making me feel good? Do I go to bed at night feeling like that was pretty darn good? Did I challenge myself? Because we never stop learning. And so we have that capability of changing up how we're doing things. And it doesn't matter if we're 20, 30, 70, 80, whatever it might be. I just think it's really cool to know that it's okay to make that change. And people are going to have an opinion about you, whether you stay where you are or whether you make change. So I think that in just knowing, I think it was like a bit of inner peace for myself, knowing that I really want this change just for me. So I'm going to be okay with holding like being able to go like this with whatever the external energies are going to be, because I know this is what I need to do for me right now. So then, and my motivating factor for me was 100% my kids at that time. And that's what kept me going. Cause I was like, I wasn't showing up nice for me, then I'm not the best mom, right?
Totally. What was your what was your experience? What did you learn about your health from your parents? What did you recognize anything that you kind of continued on that could have been from their parents and so on, generationally?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, one thing I'll give my mom great kudos for this. My mom really instilled healthy eating habits with us. And that could be a whole other conversation too, Kyle, honestly.
Fair.
So I feel for me, I'm very fortunate in that way because that was the normal. And that's how I actually resonated into my nutrition coaching, is that we want to normalize your eating. It's like you just want to enjoy yourself, and it should also be able to nourish your body in the expenditure that you're wanting to be able to put out into the world. So I like to always tell people, like, we just want to normalize it of what works for you. So instilled excellent nutritional habits in our house, which was great, but insecurities. And I would say, I'm just going to speak from probably more my mom's perspective, just being a woman
Mm.
myself and kind of seeing like a lot of limitations that she put on herself because she was always making sure everybody else was okay. And then I think then what happened is, as she's gotten older, it will instill, and this is where I resonate with this. It instills fear of like, well, what's it going to look like? What's the world going to be like out there if I go do something that I'm not used to doing because I'm so used to my comfort zone? And so, my mom and I can talk about that now, like little nuggets of like pushing, try something different, try something new, do something you've always wanted to do. And like, don't be shy and just be okay with saying yes to yourself. So I think that's kind of that shift. And I think also because of what I do for a living, my mom and I have to talk about it. Right. And so I think there can be some discomfort, but it's being able to like sort of push one another and support one another and like making those changes to do something different. But I would say, we talked about this before, like life structure of like, you go to school, you do this, you get a job, you get married, you have babies. That's not all. You need to instill other things that go with it. And also you have to find the way that works for you instead of it just being the tight little box. There's offshoots of that. And what does that look like for you? And what is it that fills I call my coaching group my happy bubble. What fills your happy bubble? And what are the things? And let's put more of those in there. It's not trying to ignore the other elements that don't feel good, but it's trying to instill more of the feel goods on repeat. And that's what I started to really do, is like, I knew that strength training, going into the gym, it would just kind of like as a natural transition for me. It worked for me here huge first before I didn't ever really go for the physical part. Yes, I did, but mentally for me, it's been like, I'm just going to say probably like a saving grace for me. It's my
Mm.
go-to all the time. My kids even say now, if I'm like off, Mom, have you trained today? Or if like you gone and moved today, it just is it gives me my happy vibe. So moving my body and taking care of myself. And I think, yeah, it's some of the things my parents maybe did growing up, I have taken it and been like, that's not what I want to do. I want to do it different. So
Totally.
digging in, right? Yeah.
I asked that question because I have this thought on how folks will talk about or have talked about generational wealth.
Yes.
And I think the same thing applies to generational health. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A fellow named Ed Milet has a really cool thing where every subjective human being has the opportunity to be the one in their lineage, the
Yes.
one to make healthier choices, the one to pivot from uh, scarcity to abundance,
Yeah.
the one to completely just readjust things, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where the generational health kind of aspect comes in. So I just wanted to ask that to see
Yeah.
what carryovers and what lessons and pivots and changes you've created in your generational health.
Yeah, I think that that's such a great question. It brings up a topic that, again, going back to my mom, is that, she's questioned me before, like, why are you always needing to do, like, I am very kind of structured in what I do because those are my normals, those are my bare minimums, right?
Hmm.
But I do like to kind of push the envelope of like, there's other opportunities, or just keeping my eyes open is how I like to kind of say it, is like just thinking of being open to new opportunities, because I used to be a no girl and now I'd rather be a yes. And that doesn't mean I'm saying yes to anything. I don't mean it in that regard. It means I'm like, ooh, okay, that's intriguing. I'd like to give that a try. And doesn't mean I have to do it forever. But my mom said, like, why are you always needing something different? And I was like, but why are you not?
Mhm.
Right. And I think that it even resonates with the women that I'm working with. Like, why are you okay with just okay? I don't want to be okay with just okay. And, I've had some people say, like, oh, you're like, you're kind of forward with what that is, but it's just how I feel for me. It feels good for me. It doesn't feel good for everybody else. But if I can help someone with being able, again, to kind of open themselves up and see, maybe some of the places that they've been holding themselves back so
Mhm.
they can be happier and healthier and stronger and all of that, I'm in.
Absolutely. I like that. Uh, I think, well, meditation specifically came to mind for this one.
Hmm.
Uh, but so I'll just use it as an example. I think it kind of ties into whatever, like physical activity, for example. But meditation is like vegetables. You may like it if it's cooked the right way. So
Yeah.
vegetables are good for everyone. Like everyone could kind of benefit from having some veggies. Uh, However, myself, I like my veggies mushy. Like I'm an old man at heart in that. I'm like an 83-year-old self with like vegetable mush, and I do
Yeah.
cook it to that degree. Like Kendra cooks her own vegetables. Uh, but people like it crunchy. And I think the thing the thing is important and works for everybody. It's just finding that subjective thing that you can plug and play, that you
Yeah.
enjoy enough that you want to continue it until either you grow to love it or
Mhm.
you find something that is a little bit more in alignment with that bare minimums requirement of whatever the goal is or activity is.
Yeah, 100%. Like I'll have people say to me, like, if I do a consultation with someone and they're wanting to do some coaching or looking to make a change, and they'll say, like, okay, well, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to eat and tell me what to exercise. I'm like, you've already been doing that, haven't you? Like, you're okay with just still being told what to do, or like thinking you have to just do this? What if we figure out what you really want? Right. And I find that always takes people by surprise. I call one of my coaching groups, I call them the don't tell me what to do group, because they're a little sassy, and we always joke about it. They don't want to be told, do this, because that's kind of been their structure of growing up. It's like the expectations we put on ourselves, the expectations that we believe that other people have us, or possibly expectations other people are putting on us. It's like, if we can kind of clear all of that away and just be like, okay, well, what are you really feeling? Like, what do you want to do? There, people are like, what? I have a choice? Yeah, we do have a choice. And let's make it, like, I always think we should just instill a bit of fun with it. And yes, there are elements that I think that we want to do, because those are going to be the best things, as we're aging, to keep us healthy and being
Mhm.
able to move through life and do all the things you want to do as you get older. But I just do also think that it should be fun, and it doesn't always have to be hardcore. Some people, they might fall into that for a while, and some people want to do it from a different way. So it's like really just kind of figuring out, okay, what feels doable for me right now, and make it kind of, as it's going to be scratchy, but make it as smooth as possible, like a nice wool over a real super scratchy wool.
Yeah.
And and then to try and go at it from that. Like, it's going to feel really awkward, but that's okay. That's all right, right?
Mhm.
It's
Totally.
embarrassing. Kind of, it can be like, feel like embarrassing on both sides. Like, oh, I keep doing this. Like, it's like the conversation. How long are you going to be okay with that same conversation? It's like super embarrassing. I'm like, well, this really sucks. Like, I suck right now. And not outward. I suck for myself, right?
Yeah.
And I think then when we can be like, oh, it's really me that this is affecting, and be okay with, like, this is change I need for me, it's not really for anybody else, then I think then that's when that shift starts to happen. And that's super cool. That feels really good, I think.
Having I totally agree with having an intrinsic motivator, like where it's for the self.
Mhm.
and doing that, you know that it's authentic to your overall experience of life.
Yeah.
Like it's like you just get dialed in. You're like, I want to do this because I know it's going to be good, and you're doing it for yourself. And that intrinsic drive
Mhm.
is like it. The fire is not dependent outside of you. The fire is within you.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And I think it's just making that fire, like,
Mhm.
stoking it and letting it go, like letting it do its thing and like just be open to different opportunities because, I think that that's also where it can be really important to have like a good support system of people that are supporting that you're having growth and that you're having change and like where is that going to come from? It might not come from your home. It might come from somewhere else. It might come from a friend or it might just come from yourself and that's okay. Like for myself, I tend to be kind of quiet in change, but I'm comfortable with that. Some people are not comfortable. I like to have a lot of like sitting in quiet to really be in my thoughts and how do I truly feel? How do I react to things emotionally when I'm thinking about change? And that's taken work and that's taken a lot of outsourcing counseling, like that sort of stuff too, being open to different things and understanding how I work. And I don't know, I always just look at it from an exciting point of view of like change is just really cool.
I agree with that. I very much, actually, I really resonate with the part you said about just kind of isolating yourself to really get 100% of the experience.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it's not just it's like, it's not, in the way that I kind of process through it, it's really sitting there with yourself, going through it's time condensing the overall experience of development in my mind.
Yeah.
Because then
Mhm.
it's not like, oh, I'm working on a little bit of this feeling today, and then you go do something, and then a little bit of this feeling today. It's like it's really condensing it all. It's really accelerating that process. I
For
think
sure.
because it creates that space to be able to actually listen. And it could be
Mhm.
listening in the sense of writing something out on paper and then reading it out loud so that you can actually like kind of like get a vibe for it. And it's like, oh, okay, I wrote that with this tonality in my mind. However, I'm saying it and it seems like this. And
Yeah.
then also just feeling into your like intuition and into your gut because it's really tough to listen to ideas or to your emotions or to your energy and your frequency if you're just bombarded with like
Mhm.
white noise in any form, energy or frequency in any other form, because it's like it's just creating a spot where you're just stagnant.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's kind of twofold to that. I think, nowadays too, we have so much ability to have way more coming at us, social media, just so many external sources. Like it's always on, right? And learning how to shut off and feel comfortable with it because our habit has become, we always reach to that. And kind of going back to our conversation earlier, was we talked about our story is for me, the game changer was I was extremely shy growing up. That was my story. Well, it was not my story when I was really little. I really was very shy, but it was like my family story, our friend's story, like that I was just shy. I'm actually not really shy. And
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with shy. It was kind of learning what does that actually mean? It means so many different things. What I know about myself that's been a huge takeaway is that quiet fills me up. So having so much external all the time doesn't work for how I'm wired. And so I know that, kind of stepping back is what's going to be the best thing to do, my self care. And instead of thinking like, well, I'm shy and I don't fit in and I'm awkward, it was like learning more of shifting that story. It's like, oh, I don't need to involve myself in those things just so that I would fit in. It doesn't feel good for me. This feels good for me. And being and like
Mhm.
finding that new path, right? And so I think that that's been a huge game changer. I read a book called Quiet, and it said it kind of in the title. It says I can't remember the exact words, but like introverts living in an extrovert's world. It's like in society, I
Okay.
think that there's a lot of ties in that you won't be successful if you're not an extrovert. And if you don't do this, and this, you won't be successful. But I'm like, ooh, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. And I think being someone who is more introverted or like the quiet space feels really good for me. Like I feel really good when I make decisions now. And like I said, that's taken years to learn that. So, it's just like wanting weight loss. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to kind of check in and do work and figure things out. And it might lead you in many different directions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that. I kind of with uh the example that you gave where it was like weight loss where you're changing your body. Something that's kind of cool with an imagery that I use when I'm trying to adopt a new behavior and I'm trying to reject a not serving me behavior. Um, I imagine the neural pathways that are going through the mind. And when I'm actively participating, so for example, right now we're having a conversation, but I'm also developing my conversation skills while also developing my tech skills while also, and so I'm learning a bunch of new things. So the thing that's cool is when you're partaking, or how I look at it is when you're partaking in the activity to whatever, even if it's just 1% or 40% or 60%, that's still going to have an accumulative growth that's going to rewire or refire neurons and strengthen those ones while atrophying and weakening the story or the neurons that are no longer serving. So I
Yes.
imagine and I visualize that. So it creates a sense of presence and peace in being in this spot. I was
Yeah.
just wanted to share that one.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. That's really good. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's excellent. And I think, just creating that awareness and like kind of that safe space of where it's okay to make change
Hmm.
is huge, right? And yeah, I had said to you that a lot of the women that I'm working with, it's kind of their sentence of like, okay, well, why are you here? Or where are you at? Is like they just are lost. They just lost themselves. They don't know who they are. They don't know where to start. They don't know what they like. They don't know how to make time for themselves. They're riddled with guilt. And it's just, then it can be like a slippery negative pattern. Or, okay, let's dig into this a little bit and let's see like, you know, what did you used to like? What are the things that used to make you happy? It can be like before you had kids, when you were younger. What are things that you always wanted to do that you've never done? And why didn't you do them? Right?
Hmm.
I read something the other day. What is the best thing that could happen? But I find
Mm.
often people will say, what is the worst that can happen? What about what is the best that can happen? I kind of like to live in that world of like, there's always little bits of happy. And so if we just sometimes flip one word, it can feel so different. And that really resonates with me. So, what is the best thing that could happen? Right. I
Hmm.
think that that's huge. Like, then I think it just automatically instills a mindset shift of like, oh, I'm thinking of something positive. But I also find it fascinating with people is like you ask them like, what do you like about yourself? And there'll be a long pause.
Hmm.
And it could be that they really don't know or they're super uncomfortable with saying it. Right. I'm like, why can't you say something nice that you like about yourself? And that's like, what's a good quality? And for women, I don't know if this is so much for men, but for women, it not being tied to what they physically look like.
Oh yeah,
Right.
that's definitely with dudes too.
Yeah. I
Totally.
think so too. I think they're a little bit quieter about it than women might be, but
Mhm.
but maybe. Not. Yeah. So yeah, I just always find it so fascinating, like how we can so easily go down that rabbit hole of like saying all the things that are not good, and I don't like this about myself, and I don't like that, and whatever the story may be. But then when you pull out the, well, hang on, what feels good? What do you like? I don't know. Why? Why are you okay with that?
Totally. There is a something that ties into this, and I'm actually really pumped to. I think it's a cool one. My mom was really pumped about it, but I was kind of going through something similar. I was making a list or going through my childhood experiences, and it had to do with flow state. And when we're going in the zone or in a flow state, it's something that is difficult enough that we are enjoying it or that we are struggling with it, but enjoyable enough that we can keep doing it. And a lot of the times, the things that we enjoy doing or took us little effort to convince ourselves into doing when we were children is something where we can harness that as an adult and really rekindle a lot of the creative kind of
Mhm.
aspects that where flow comes from, because that's where there's no perceptions. You're in the present moment, and that's when ideas can come to you. So I sent it in a text, and my mom's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna call for this one because it was a tough one." And the question was, what is it that you remember with me as a child that I would just do without even thinking, that I just loved doing? And
That's
it's pretty similar to what I do now, like a lot of walking. I would do a lot of walking, and I would just go. So my grandmother got me a leash. It was good. Otherwise, I would be gone. Honestly, my
to be in the
grandmother,
forest.
totally. My mom said after this conversation that she it was I was actually with my grandmother and we were at the store and she looked away for a second and then I was gone. And so she went to go drop me off and then had me with the leash. And my mom was like, "What is that?" She's like, "I just looked away for a second. I wasn't going to risk that again."
No, you're an adventurer, right?
Apparently. But that was
Yeah.
something that she popped up where I still do a lot of walking and I enjoy it. Uh, but it just reminded me when you were talking about it that
Mhm.
it's a cool idea to ask your parent what you would do as a kid as well, because then it's an alternate perspective. Because I'm not going to remember almost much of anything that early on. So having that alternate perspective, you get to have those different ideas. It's like, oh yeah, I used to draw a lot. I don't draw as
Mhm.
much. I'm really still artistic. So I'll like paint. That was my main like activity for a solid chunk of time. And so
Yeah. I
it's a cool insight.
That is a really cool insight, and it's interesting you say that. Like my daughter, she's my youngest. I found if she would go through kind of like more, say, difficult times in high school or whatever, we would set up her painting, and it was super cool to just watch her do anything with it has like a creative output where it's quiet. Is she's just like in her zen, and it would just reset her. And so I that's such a great idea is asking your parents for that insight because I think as parents we do see so much of that, and then I think we get into the adult world, we lose some of that just kind of gentle nature and that like you say that flow of like what we would just do normally. Now we kind of structure everything and think about when can I do this and when can I do that, and of course life changes and our schedules change, but yeah, just incorporating some of that, what were your feel goods when you were younger, is so great.
Yeah.
I
And I
have
know
a guy that I coach and he loves skipping. So we always have skipping in his program. Yeah. And he's like, I think he's almost 60 and he just loves it. It's great.
I think that's awesome.
Mhm.
Um, Before we were recording, we were talking about growth and uh very much like how you described your growth of that awakening phase and being more excited about life now than ever before very much so resonated with me. And tell tell me about, let's just touch on that one actually. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm like,
Well,
can I find a cool way to flow this in? And I'm like, nah, just tell me.
let's just hit it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, you and I were talking about it before, and I think we kind of had a similar, like our time where there's like almost like that timeline where you're like, ooh, the light switch went on, or it just changed. And for me, it was definitely when I had my kids, and then after I had my daughter, and then I really, that's kind of when I started going to the gym. And it was just like, I never went about my change in I just tried to kind of give myself grace. Like, I'm going to go and try this. It's going to feel really uncomfortable. I like, you know, quietly like find my way in little spaces. And then as I became more comfortable, I was like, okay, this feels okay. I felt like it was a safe place. I was very fortunate kind of in my years of changes that I had amazing people around me that were super supportive. And so I think that that's a
Mhm.
big thing. But, I was sharing with you that on Wednesday, I'm turning 50. I remember when I was turning 40, I was so excited about turning 40. I'm like, ooh, what's 40 going to be? And my 40s has been pretty cool. And I think in my last 2 years, I would say I've really pushed the envelope of like really putting myself in an uncomfortable space of something in like professionally that I would never do. But in turn, that has also personally made some changes of like having more belief in my beliefs, if that makes sense, of like, I'm doing these things and I'm making these changes because they feel the best for me and I'm able to show up better. And then, like, I think, I had said a little bit before about being uncomfortable about saying kind things about yourself. I think when you have that growth, it doesn't become like, oh, I'm saying kind things about myself. Oh, I'm saying not nice things about myself. It just becomes like this beautiful flowing space where it just is like a feel good space. And then when you do have things that feel kind of on the two different spectrums, you're not having those extreme high lows or beating yourself up. You're just able to be like, okay, I got this. Like, what do I need to do? What are the skills and the tools? And like, what are all the things I can do? And my family laughs at me. My husband laughs at me because like if we go for a walk, I notice everything. I didn't used to do that. And that's something my grandma instilled in me because when I was a kid, we used to lie in the grass and look at the clouds and find the shapes. And she was always noticing all of the little details. And that's something I had really noticed that I had lost and that I have refound. And that's probably been in the last handful of years. And that's fallen into place in so many different parts of my life, is like noticing all the little things that are like really cool aha moments that are feel good. And like, I would like more of that. And that's okay. And so how am I going to do that? And then it starts to just, gently nudge out those things that aren't so feel good
Nice.
without, like I said before, it doesn't have to be so aggressive, right? It's just like, oh, I'm going to go here and go here. And this feels pretty good. And it's a nice little windy road and give it a try.
Nice. Uh, Kendra and I have I I resonate with that one, and I think of it like removing more cognitive stuff makes
Mm-hmm.
makes way for a broader viewership, I suppose, where you get to see a lot more. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
Um, and what was it? Where was I going with that one? It's something I think is neat with being able to see things is, yeah, it's a process of removing the things that are not serving you, like how you said, but slowly but surely, just little by little. And
Mm-hmm.
Kendra and I were out for a date night once, and we were going for a walk, and we talked about how oftentimes we're talking about momentum in the sense of the snowball effect, where there's a snowball, and then over time it goes faster and faster and faster. However, it also accumulates more and more mass. So there's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a point in time where eventually that momentum is going to start creating destruction,
Yes.
because that's the thought process of more, 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 more.
Mm-hmm.
So what we kind of thought of is that it's in reverse. You're not accumulating mass, but you're removing enough stuff so that it creates light speed. So it's not the snowball effect, it's a light speed effect. So it's
Mm-hmm.
by decreasing a bunch of internal or external clutter and having that vision broadened to the possibilities and the opportunities and the um, the things that are in alignment with what you want to accomplish. And then it just
Mm-hmm.
moves way faster because you're going with light speed rather than creating more, 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 more to move faster, 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 faster. It is just remove, remove, remove. And then there's nothing faster than just energy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, when you go through times where it's like, I think that we have this belief that we always have to be making change, but there can be, I think the cool thing is that when maybe you've worked on some change and it feels really good and where you're at in that moment is super good, hang out there for a while. And if that feels really good, just keep doing that. You don't always have to be like, I've got to have this goal, this goal, this goal, and I'm going to do more and more and more. Because exactly like you say, that's that snowball effect that eventually falls apart. Whereas if you can kind of slow it down and, not be so reactionary in the things that you're doing, slow it down, process it. How's this feeling? How is this working? Do I want to keep doing this? And give it time, like not just a day.
Yeah.
But
What?
yeah, give it time. And then if you feel you find a cool space that you're in, then stick with it and just keep doing that. And then you'll know. I believe you'll know when it's time that there's like okay, I want something new. And that's what I think has been probably my biggest shift is like being super excited for like there is always different opportunity and there's always new experiences that you can have and you can find joy in so many things and just taking those little bits of joy and just enjoy it really. It doesn't have to, everything doesn't have to be epic, and I don't know, just finding those moments that are just really feel goods and then filling yourself up with that, like end your day saying like that was pretty good. I did some cool things today and they don't have to be groundbreaking. They can just feel good.
I like that. The visual that came to mind is when you're going down a river, sometimes you're going to shift over to the beach side and, relax
Yeah.
and then enjoy that aspect of the journey for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, like what you said, you're going to pop back onto that river, but
Sure.
what's yeah, it's what's the sense of like pushing the destination when there's beautiful beach fronts along the way or beautiful mountains, you could take the scenic route.
Great. I would kind of relate that to travel, and like we love to travel. And so sure, you can go on a trip and you can fill every single day with like there's something to do. Or you can kind of dig into like, hey, what's it like here? Like if we're traveling in Italy, I don't want to go like the main touristy area. I want to go off the beaten path and see like what else is out there. And I kind of relate that to other parts of life too. Like what else is out there? Be curious. And if it's feeling like what you're doing now is not resonating with you, like just go into things with curiosity instead of fear. And I think that that was my shift in my 30s, is that I was so fearful, but I was also so fearful that this is what my whole life is going to look like? Because this sucks. I'm
Mm.
not happy. And so that I think for me, even though, I think a big factor for me was my kids, a huge factor for myself was that I didn't like the way my life felt. And I felt like I was just signing up for just being okay with being okay. I want more than being okay.
Damn, gonna clip that one. Yeah. That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Jeez. Yeah, not okay with being
Finally
okay.
speak.
Freaking mic drop in that one. Shit. Okay, Tony Robbins. I'm kidding. Oh, that was awesome. That
But
was that was really
I
good.
think too, there's so much like people keep asking me like, are you freaking out about being 50? No, I'm freaking excited because I am very happy. I feel happy. And that for me
Mm.
is a really good place. I feel like I have joy. I'm happy with primarily what my everyday is and how I'm able to live my life, and primarily mostly how my mind works when I go into different situations and how I'm able to kind of manage my space that feels good for me. And if I can instill some of that in other women when they're looking to make change, like that is so fulfilling. It's not always about like, I want to be a size 2 or I want to be this. It's like, hang on, step back here. There's way more to this picture. Like, there's way more cool things than that. Yeah, that'll come. But if we can focus on, all the other things that just are fulfilling, and what are you doing on the daily? Does it feel good? Can you make some change? Are you showing up better in your home? Are you being a better mom? Are you being a better friend? Are you being kinder to yourself? Can you say something nice about yourself now? Because I'll always go back, like, what's the nice thing that you can say about yourself? What's happening that's feeling good, right?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
actually I noticed earlier you use both the word grace and gentle. So
Mhm.
being gentle with yourself and having grace for yourself.
Mhm.
I just had a recent reframe one and it just kind of popped up. So I'm going to share it just as another option.
Mhm.
But I found I was aiming to, when I was being more graceful with my internal dialogue, uh, it was in my mind, it was indicating that I was being, uh, or I was coaching myself in a way that wasn't serving me the best because the internal dialogue wasn't matching up with grace.
Okay.
So it wasn't a good switcheroo. So I
Right.
actually switched it up to be merciful
Yeah,
because I
I like
think
that.
that the internal dialogue oftentimes is our own worst enemy, like that kind of a saying. We are our
Mhm.
own worst enemy. So
Yeah.
if we're consciously aware of the negative internal dialogue, then we could say, hey, be merciful.
Hmm.
So it's not grace, but I think that using both merciful and grace, mercy and grace, I think
Yeah.
both of those are like really good and gentle. I really like gentle too. That's like real good. I'm feeling that actually. Uh, but yeah, merciful has been one that I've used recently in the last like probably 3 weeks that I've been testing out. And it's alleviated a lot of just perceived like conceptual stress. Whereas
That's,
there's nothing that's actually there, but it's something, and this is specifically an example, and if you're open to me sharing.
yeah, for sure. Please do.
So learning a new skill. So I'm
Mhm.
learning something that's tech-based specific, like it has to do with the computer. And I'm familiar enough with it and I can conceptually understand it in my mind, but I'm not physically capable of application yet. And
Okay.
that is frustrating. So
Hmm.
my internal dialogue is, you understand it, Kyle. Why the hell are you incapable of doing this? Are you
Yeah.
dumb?
Hmm.
That's just a negative internal dialogue. However, that is not the truth.
Yes.
And being aware that that is not the truth, because I'm clearly capable of using technology. We are talking right now. It's just I'm
Yes,
learning
exactly.
a new aspect of it. And so earlier, even today, actually, having that internal dialogue of, oh, are you incapable of doing this? No, no, no. Be merciful with yourself. Have mercy for yourself. You don't need to beat yourself up when you're already struggling. So you don't
Right.
need to kick a dog when it's already down.
So
So
true. Yeah,
so
so
be
true.
merciful, practice mercy. And another thing with that is I think when we practice that internal stuff, when we practice grace internally, when we practice being gentle internally, when we practice being merciful internally, we can practice being loving, we can
Yeah.
practice being joyful.
Mhm.
I think once we get that internal environment where those physical sensations and psychological and emotional sensations, when we can tune that by ourselves, then
Mhm.
the external world has less power over us because our emotional regulation is based off of ourselves rather than the uncontrollable, unpredictable aspects of existence outside of us.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's such a great way of putting it. And it also brought up a thought for me too, is that, I think that even though I say have grace and be gentle with it, I also feel like call yourself out.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
don't always think like we have to go about everything in a gentle. It's like call yourself out. You can do big things. And just as an example, I had some women who were learning how to barbell deadlift and they have fear. And so, we go through the movement, make sure that they feel encouraged, and then they do it. And they're like, wow, right? And it's like, just do it, just do it, just try something new. Like, what is the best thing that can come of it? It made you feel pretty freaking amazing because you just did something that you thought that you probably couldn't, but that's just perception, right? And so it's just trusting the process. I like to think of it as like you're learning a new language. It's not going to happen overnight, and so you're learning a new language of what your life looks like and what you want it to feel like. And it's, you're going to kind of jumble your way through it at first, but it will become smoother over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. All
yeah.
righty. Yeah, that's gonna be wrapping it up pretty soon here. Before I go into the last two questions though,
Okay.
just in case, is there anything that has to be said that hasn't been said yet?
I think just the biggest thing that has resonated with me and the changes that I've had over like pretty much the last 20 years is it's okay to want more. And so, I always like to stick into that. Like, I don't want to just be okay going through life. We have this one opportunity to have this amazing life. And so I want to know what more is out there and what more I'm capable of. And some will be great and some will be not. And I don't know, you just take all the little nuggets from it and go with it.
I love that. Oh, that's great. Now, Going into the final two questions.
Okay.
There's a lot of philosophizing in this one. There
All
was a
right.
lot of, there's a lot, no, 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 it was awesome. There was a lot of frameworks, there's a lot of structures, there's a lot of anecdotal and subjective insights through the progress. So I think uh, there's an arsenal of information that someone can use in this podcast that you certainly brought to the table. And I think it's going to impact some solid peeps.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kyle. It's been super fun. It's always nice to chat. Love it.
Always. So going into the final two questions.
I feel
So,
like there's pressure here.
well, yeah, I'm adding
Nervous
some, I suppose. I'm
anticipation.
just like
Yeah.
putting it on there.
It's
So,
all good.
setting the context.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe there's a little bit of pressure. Setting the context. It's at the end of your days.
Yes.
You're on your deathbed. You're surrounded by all the people that you care for. What is the piece of advice that you want to pass on?
Oh, mine's like do all the things, all the amazing opportunities that you have presented your way, that you have this little like fear and you want to say no, just say yes. Just give it a try. And just it just can open up just, I don't know, this amazing little portal of amazing things that can happen. You're just always learning more things about yourself and having more opportunity. And that's, I think, what we're really here for.
I really like that. That's a great one. Then the final question, the very best version of you that you envision is that you're working towards or that you already are. The best version of you is sitting next to you right now. What piece of advice does she have to give you for this season of your life?
Oh, this season of my life. This season of my life, like I have to say that I had shared with you earlier that my last 2 years has been a huge game changer of personal business, just growth of like finding out things about myself that I really didn't know. And also realizing I still had stories that I was telling myself. And so like opening those up. And I think my word for this year was growth, but I think that for next year it will be growth with a bit more instilled quiet, because I still think that we can always I want to have growth, but I don't want it to be like wow out there. I want it to be like feeling nice and smooth. So that would be that's where I foresee myself, is just making sure there's not too many of those things that are coming at all of us, and just quieting that down a little bit more and continue with my growth, because that's been feeling really, really good.
I like that. Yeah, that's great. Big fan of that.
Thanks, Kyle.
Well, folks, that's what I've got for you in today's episode. Kristine, where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Pure Strength and Nutrition. Hope to see you there.
Awesome. If you love today's episode, please do me a favor right now. Take a screenshot, share it on your Instagram stories, tag me with my handle at DapperDudeKyle, along with at Pure Strength and Nutrition with no spaces or anything, which I think is amazing that you got that. That is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, keep up the kindness, and I hope your day treats you as good as you look.